On Chanukah, the star of the show is the Chanukiah, and by extension, the temple menorah. In the few stories told in the Talmud about the temple itself, several focus on the menorah. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Mizbeach, the great altar in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, discussed at some length by the rabbis, and which gets relatively little attention from us nowadays. The Mizbeach and its rededication are the subject of the first stanza of Ma'os Sur, accomplishing the seemingly impossible task of rhyming the word Mizbeach at the end of each of 3 lines. The Mizbeach, most of us know, was not the place where animals were slaughtered. In fact, the top was used for burning sacrifices. Other parts were used for the application of blood, flour, wine, oil, and even water. It was a central component of all that went on in the Holy Temple. In the first temple and the Mishkan, the smoke from the sacrifices went straight up, regardless of the weather. At Shlomo's dedication of the first temple, there were so many sacrifices that the floor of the courtyard had to be sanctified as part of a greater Mizbeach, so there would be enough room to burn all of the sacrificial parts. In a sense, even the floor of the courtyard was sacred as an altar. Walking through the beautiful copper doors of Nicanor, one would see the Mizbeach looming right in front of you, some 50 feet by 50 feet, with a 50-foot ramp leading up to it from the left. It was 15 to 20 feet tall, an imposing structure, with corners and edges that were perfectly square like those of tefillin. A nick or crack would disqualify it and would have to be repaired before being used again. Once it was nicked when the Kohen Gadol did not perform one of his public functions correctly during Sukkot, and the people there pelted him with esrogs and nicked the corner of the altar. At Chanukah, one thing the Hellenists did was to put a statue of Zeus in the temple. The altar was used for this odious worship, and after the Maccabees were victorious, in addition to looking for untainted oil, they, quote, cleaned up the Beis HaMikdash, which is to say, they destroyed the statuary, got rid of all of the foreign elements, and were left to think about what to do with the Mizbeach. According to the Talmud, they destroyed it themselves and put it into Geniza in a room next to the Beis HaMoked, which is the place that the priests on duty spent the night. This must have been a difficult call. There was no one left alive from the generation that had built the second temple, and no one had practical knowledge of how to build a Mizbeach. According to most Meforshim, the shamir was no longer available to cut stone without steel. Also, could the Greeks actually forbid the Mizbeach to others? They didn't own it, and the form of worship they imposed on it was alien to it. One could have argued that it was stone, attached to the ground, and not able to become tameh. Nonetheless, they destroyed it themselves and found a way to rebuild it properly. At least they knew where it was supposed to be, but we do not. We should be zocheh to their strength of will and character to do the right thing for ourselves and for Klal Yisrael this Chanukah. Chag Sameach.